After learning that he has an illness that will render him infertile, a man meets various women in a desperate attempt to have children. During a boisterous house party, the electric power suddenly shuts off, disappointing the attendees. Unsure of the possible cause, Jonah and his friends scour his cabinet for his electrical bill. Stevie recovers a disconnection notice, which happens to be the final one. They realize that Jonah is past his due date, so he volunteers to sing to continue their party. Despite her offer, Gus remains dejected that they must end the party earlier than expected. Jonah comforts him, and to lift his mood, he decides to borrow electricity from his neighbor, Silvio. Outside, Gus and Stevie watch in embarrassment as Jonah hugs Silvio to convince him. In the end, Jonah returns to the house triumphantly, as Silvio permits him to use his electricity. Thinking it's for free, Stevie and Gus express their gratitude to Silvio, but the man sets things straight. He charges them $500, explaining that he and Jonah agreed to pay the amount alongside a bottle of liquor. Annoyed, Gus confronts Jonah about the significant payment he's demanding. Jonah remains unbothered because he plans to recover their expenses by requesting money from their guests. Immediately, Jonah announces to the crowd that they'll need donations to continue using electricity. Though some refuse, the majority of them are willing to donate just to continue the party. Moments later, Jonah is having a moment with one of his guests, Becky, when the woman feels something is off in his lower body. She discovers that he has a lump in his crotch, which makes Jonah feel concerned for his health. The next day, he gets himself checked, and Dr. Mackenzie reveals a malignant condition in his reproductive glands. He sees the worry in his patient's face, so the doctor assures him it can be treated and is optimistic that he'll make a complete recovery. Now, he proposes that they'll perform surgery on him to remove the affected organ next week. Still unsettled, Jonah wonders if he can still be intimate with his future partners, and the doctor confirms. Unfortunately, he warns him that the treatment can render him infertile. Dr. Mackenzie then recommends that he try cryopreservation while he's yet to undergo surgery. That same day, Jonah heads to a fertility clinic, where a lab technician hands him a container and instructs him on how he will extract his seed. Back home, Gus takes the initiative to inform Stevie about Jonah's illness, much to the man's dismay. Since they're already on the topic, Jonah assures them it isn't terminal and can be treated. Due to his illness, Stevie asks if they should cancel their next party, but their sick friend refuses. Stevie and Gus are confused by his decision, so he clarifies that he's uncomfortable explaining his condition to their guests. One day, as the trio decorates the house for the upcoming party, Jonah receives a sudden phone call. It turns out that it's from the fertility clinic, and they're summoning him for his results. Upon arriving at the clinic, the lab technician informs him that he has a special case in which his seed doesn't survive the freezing procedure. In short, cryopreservation won't be an effective option for him. Still hopeful, Jonah wonders if other options are available, so the lab technician recommends that he sleep with his girlfriend. The following day, he visits his sister Claire to inform her about his illness. As she checks on the document about their mother, who passed away due to a similar condition, the man's attention keeps on wandering to his nephew. Claire notices his disassociation, so she snaps him back to reality. Envious that his sister has another child, he excuses himself as he needs to call his ex-girlfriend to try procreating with her. At the nearby cafe, Jonah meets with Ava, but awkwardness is still evident between them. Straightforwardly, she reminds him that they aren't meant to meet because they agreed about not having contact for 6 months. Even with this reminder, the man blurts out that he misses her just to rekindle their failed relationship. Jonah then shares that he's considering creating a family with her, believing it's his newfound purpose in life. Ava simply laughs in disbelief and proceeds to chastise him for thinking such a thing. Honestly, she's frustrated with her ex-boyfriend, who she thinks is emotionally detached and selfish because people have been lenient on him when his mother passed. She emphasizes that she doesn't see herself with him, as he refuses to change. The next day, Jonah pleads with Dr. Mackenzie to extend the date for his operation, because he's still yet to find a partner. The doctor warns him that prolonging the date of his operation will cause a small risk of his disease spreading. Despite this, the patient insists on meeting for the next 3 weeks, explaining that it's the only date he's free. That night, Stevie accompanies Jonah to the train station to prevent him from pursuing Becky. Stevie expresses her disapproval of her. believing that the woman isn't suitable to become a mother because she has a severe substance dependence. Moreover, she says there are other ways to have a child, particularly adopting. Regardless, Jonah visits Becky's residence, as he wants to try his luck in having his biological child. However, when he enters her room, she immediately tries to make love to him, ignoring his pleas to talk. Without a choice, Jonah informs her that he has a malignant condition. During their conversation, the woman tearfully mourns the fact that Jonah will be infertile, especially since she thinks he'll be a fantastic father. This gives him hope that he can finally procreate, so he asks Becky if she wants to start a family with him, given that he still has 3 weeks of fertility left. Though she's happy for him, she refuses to be his partner because she doesn't see a future for them. Upon returning home, Jonah's desperation grows stronger, so he decides to stalk his ex-girlfriends on their social media accounts to contact them. For the next few days, he meets with them and tries to persuade them to start a family with him. To his dismay, they all reject him, finding him emotionally and financially unreliable to raise a child. One day, as Stevie spends time with her colleague David, she is surprised to see that one of Jonah's ex-girlfriends has left him. As she tries to focus on their date, Jonah suddenly approaches their table, much to her surprise. He then discloses that he's ineligible to adopt because of his condition. The man explains that the adoption support sites require the adoptive parents to have a clean medical history. After sharing his thoughts, Jonah abruptly leaves, which creates an awkward atmosphere between Stevie and David. David encourages Stevie to follow Jonah, but she declines, wanting to continue their date. However, he insists as he notices him sitting on the pavement. Moments later, at a bar, the woman suggests that Jonah should have an arrangement with an older single lady or even a sapphic couple. She reasons that women in their early 20s aren't interested in having children. Stevie volunteers to help him, especially since there are possible candidates from her workplace. The following day, Gus criticizes her for helping Jonah procreate, but she justifies her decision by saying she has no choice. Since the man finds their actions unreasonable, he declares they won't host parties. Not long after, at the couple's residence, Jonah asks which will carry the child, as he prefers to sleep with the attractive one. Silence envelops the room as the couple feels uncomfortable with his question. Still, Allison politely answers that her partner, Jennifer, is supposed to be the birth mother. Eventually, Allison assumes the responsibility because it's been her dream. Jonah's mood evidently brightens as he favors her more, but Stevie feels embarrassed at his reaction. Moving on, Jennifer asks Jonah why he wants to be a father. He reveals that he just feels like it, which doesn't sit well with the couple. Sensing their skepticism, he invites the couple to attend his babysitting session to prove he'll be a good father. When the day finally comes, Stevie attends to a phone call from the couple. Curious, Jonah wonders if they'll come, but she sadly informs him they won't. In the park, she tries to convince Jonah to drop his plans, stressing that his future children might resent or even leave him. However, he begs to differ because his mother told him that bringing them to the world was the happiest moment in her life. Thus, he wants to experience the same, which renders Stevie silent. Upon arriving at Claire's residence, Jonah orders Stevie to take his nephew as his hands are already full. Though she isn't good among children, she complies. At first, she encounters trouble unbuckling the seatbelt from Jonah's nephew, afraid that she'll awaken him. But in the end, she successfully carries the child out of the car. Unexpectedly, Claire's maternal instincts awaken as the child snuggles into her arms. The following day, Stevie converses with Marcy, her other colleague, and convinces her to consider Jonah's offer. She remembers that the woman is interested in considering a donor to conceive a child now that she's approaching 40. Interested, she wonders what the arrangement will be like, and Stevie reveals that Jonah will be a fully functioning father. Stevie then assures Marcy that even though she'll have a child with Jonah, she is still free to date whoever she wants. That evening, in Stevie's office, she notices her colleague's child smiling at her, which makes her long to have one. Meanwhile, Jonah finally meets the potential birth mother at a bar. He surprisingly enjoys her company, given that she isn't his type. A few drinks later, the pair kiss, giving the man hope that his plan will come to fruition. On the succeeding day, Marcy expresses her gratitude to Stevie for organizing her meeting with Jonah. Though she finds him attractive, she shares that nothing happened between them, She clarifies that she can't just jump into bed with him because she doesn't know him well. Given how things have turned out, Stevie decides to check her fertility chart, considering offering herself to her friend. Back home, Jonah rushes to her location and asks her if Marcy left any messages for him. Stevie is surprised that she didn't call him, so she's compelled to report that her colleague isn't interested in conceiving a child with him. Jonah starts to feel frustrated with himself, admitting that he tried to sleep with her only to fail due to his drunkenness. Upon hearing this, Stevie scolds him for being brash, stressing that he isn't supposed to treat her like one of his conquests. Remorseful for his actions, he follows her to apologize and pleads to give him another with her friend since she's his last hope. To further convince her, Jonah declares that he's willing to give Marcy his house if she chooses to carry his child. Curious, Stevie asks if he's fine with being a house husband, while her colleague continues her job and brings her lovers into the house. Jonah confirms without hesitation, but she advises against giving Marcy the house. He remains firm in his decision and even promises to place his property under both of their names. Absent-mindedly, Stevie blurts out that she won't need it, fully communicating that she's considering being his partner. Her words confuse Jonah, but she refuses to elaborate and sends him out of her room. Later that evening, he leaves a voice message for Stevie, expressing his willingness to raise a child with her. The next morning, she invites Jonah into her room and gives him a document containing a set of conditions she made for their arrangement. She dreads the possibility that it might not work, so she wants their arrangement to be confidential, even with Gus. Through this, they can still return to their normal dynamics. Due to the length of the contract, Jonah signs it without reading it, much to Stevie's frustration. She encourages him to raise questions, but he's fine with her conditions. Instead, the man wonders if she's sure of her decision, given that she initially didn't want a child. Stevie admits that the benefits she'll reap pushed her to offer her company. Touched, Jonah proceeds to close the curtains, determined to make love with her. However, she's repulsed by the idea and reminds him that the contract requires them to conceive a child artificially. On the same night, the pair heads to a motel, where they'll stay for 4 days based on Stevie's fertility window. During their practice, Jonah accidentally breaks the syringe, which irks Stevie because it's their most important equipment. Without a choice, the pair drives to the nearest pharmacy, but to their dismay, it's about to close. Stevie is frustrated that they missed the first day, so Jonah is compelled to offer that they sleep together. Returning to the motel, the pair tries to be intimate, but their awkwardness prevents them from pursuing the deed. She suggests they take things slow, which he agrees with. The pair eventually makes love, surprised that they enjoyed each other's company. For the next 3 nights, the pair continue their secret affair and become closer. One morning, at work, Stevie is horrified to discover that she has a period. Immediately, she meets Jonah and informs him that their brief nights of passion failed. Because of this, he feels frustrated because he's expecting they'll finally conceive a child. The woman encourages him to find another option, but Jonah refuses because it isn't feasible now that he only has 3 days left before his operation. His words sound like he's blaming Stevie, which insults her. Not wanting to dwell on the topic, she orders him to leave, reasoning that she needs to get back to work. Jonah senses the anger in her voice, so he confronts her about it, and emphasizes that she's lucky because she has a lot of time to have children. Furious, she abruptly leaves her car, but the man follows her. He reminds her that it's her plan to try it with him, much to her exasperation. Out of spite, Stevie voices that she's relieved they failed to conceive because it would have been a disaster. Following this, a heartbroken Jonah returns to their house, and Gus reprimands him for being late. To make things worse, he informs him that Stevie won't attend their party tonight. The man tries to eavesdrop as Jonah tries to call Stevie, but he quickly drops the call, afraid he might discover their affair. Instead, his friend assures him they'll be fine, promising to help him prepare for their party. That night, Gus excitedly approaches Jonah to inform him that he has invited Ava. When the former lovers meet, she instantly hugs her ex-boyfriend after learning he has a malignant condition. She then realizes why he's determined to have a child immediately. Due to the sensitive topic, Jonah takes the woman upstairs to talk. In his room, Ava is remorseful for saying hurtful things toward him, especially for branding him as a terrible father. Admittedly, she can see him as a good one, remembering how he handles his niece and nephew well. Overcome with emotions, Jonah kisses his ex-girlfriend, leading them to become intimate. During the deed, he suddenly pulls away, unable to continue because he's now in love with someone else. At that moment, a police siren interrupts their conversation, prompting the man to get dressed so he can deal with them. Before leaving, he orders Ava to stay in the room and apologizes for stringing her along with his plan. As Jonah weaves through the sea of people, he unexpectedly encounters Stevie, who's distraught because she can't reach his phone. She profusely apologizes to him, explaining that she didn't mean what she said earlier. Right then, Ava emerges from Jonah's room, and Stevie thinks they have reconciled. Feeling betrayed, she storms off, but her secret lover proceeds to follow her. The woman refuses to acknowledge him, so she enters her car and drives away. To her surprise, a persistent Jonah clings to her vehicle, only for him to get dragged. Alarmed, she stops her car and quickly rushes to his aid. Once he regains his composure, he says he doesn't care about having a child anymore and wants to be with her instead. Sadly, Stevie, who's still wounded at the idea that Ava slept with him, expresses that she wants to have a child, but not with him. On the day of the operation, only Claire and Gus volunteer to take Jonah to the hospital. When Dr. Mackenzie orients him, Stevie arrives, so Claire pretends she needs Gus's help with her son to give the pair privacy to talk. Now alone, she apologizes for hurting him, but he insists she has a point. Jonah then encourages her to have a child if she wants to, and believes she must have it with a man who respects her. Suddenly, Gus intervenes to announce that the operation will start in a few seconds. He tightly hugs Jonah to show his support and proceeds to leave. However, he stops in his tracks after he overhears something controversial from Stevie. The woman seeks reassurance from the patient about whether he truly wants to be with her. When he confirms, she proposes they find a donor to have a child together. Jonah is delighted with her initiative, which leads them to kiss. Gus, who's clueless that his friends are involved with each other, curses in disbelief.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.